And welcome. So you are our brave souls who've come to our early morning session this morning after a big party last night. Thank you so much for coming. First of all, how are you doing? Well, good. You've got a lot of energy here. We've got a big day today. Let me start by saying something completely obvious. Many of us cannot live without our cell phones or our devices. The first thing you did when you came in, a lot of you, was check your phone or check your messages. I was watching you as you walked in. I don't know about you if you've ever had this experience, but recently I went on a business trip and I actually left my phone at home in my office. And I spent 2 days of near physical panic, worried that I had left something very important behind. It's like I'd lost a limb, or I had left the department store and left my baby buggy behind. I don't know if you ever had those dreams when you were a young mother. It's incredible. These devices, this technology is ubiquitous. Did you know that this year, in 2014, the number of active cell phones in the world surpassed... Excellent. In a few minutes. That's already started. The number of cell phones, active cell phones in the world, actually surpassed the world population. So these are incredibly ubiquitous. If you've got your phone in your hand, can you just lift it up, or your device? How many of you actually, yeah, absolutely ubiquitous. And we can do a lot with these devices. They're incredibly powerful. You can order a pizza with them, but you can also send your taxes. You can check your heart rate. You can do a number of different things that are incredibly important to your life, and not just check your email. In fact, our next panel, we're going to be introduced to some new tech pioneers, and they're going to tell us the kind of things that they're doing with the technology that they're working on. So please, if I could introduce our panel moderator, Hans-Paul Bürkner. He's the chairman of the Boston Consulting Group. So over to you.
Thank you, Jillian. And actually, I must admit, I'm just in the position that I have left my mobile phone in the hotel, and of course, I feel a bit uncomfortable, I must admit. Although I don't think I have lost a limb or so, yet, not yet. Well, also very warm welcome from me this morning. Learnings from new tech entrepreneurs in emerging markets and also developed markets, and also learnings especially from female entrepreneurs. Do they have different challenges, different opportunities? We'll find out in a moment. So let me introduce our panel. We'll have first an intense discussion within the panel for the first half of our session, which is only 1 hour. And then we'll open up to you. And I will ask everybody to be short and sharp so that we really have a lot of voices that we can hear this morning. So let me start by introducing the panel. Durkas Muthoni. She is the CEO and founder of Open World, a software company in Kenya. Then we have Maria Teresa Arnal, CEO and founder of Clarus, a digital and marketing strategy firm in Mexico. Nisha Babat, she is project director for Innovating Women, a campaign to crowdsource candid and first-hand accounts of women in technology. And last but not least, Anil Raj, CEO and founder of OMC, a power company from India. So welcome, and let's engage immediately into an intense discussion. And I would like to start with you, Maria Teresa, and ask you about your experience in, you don't have to push anything, just hold it close. What's your experience, the key challenges, the key opportunities as a tech entrepreneur in Mexico, and how has it really changed the country, you think, but also, of course, your own life?
Well, the first thing I want to say is Mexico is a market that is well above average in terms of penetration, and that's, I think I want to make clear, because sometimes people think that emerging markets are behind, so far behind, and in the case in Mexico, we're not. Over 50% of the population in Mexico have access to the internet on a daily basis, And actually in some areas, such as Mexico City or other urban areas, it's over 60–65%. So that puts us in a position very similar to developed countries. And that basically means that the way that technology is impacting lives in emerging markets is very similar to developed markets. So basically, we're using our cell phones and we're using our computers, you know, for mostly every transaction that you can think: banking, you know, e-commerce, communications, etc. So that's a very important point to make. The other thing I want to say is the main issue that we face in Mexico in terms of moving forward, of course, is infrastructure as part of bridging the digital gap, which is, you know, still something we need to work on. But beyond infrastructure, we're at a point where what really needs to be done to get the rest of Mexicans online is not necessarily only infrastructure, but it's education. Actually, the main reason why Mexicans don't go online is because they don't know how to use technology. And that's a big issue. And it's a big issue also for women who, of course, given that we have this, we're behind in STEM subjects, and, you know, technology is not necessarily one of the things that are pushed in the women environment, puts us at a more as a disadvantage than men. There is not a lot of women in technology in Mexico, but this is, again, not, you're gonna, my fellow panelists will talk about this too in developed countries, so it's an issue that, you know, I think it's an issue that we need to face in, you know, in a worldwide basis and not necessarily only in emerging markets.
Bürkner, so how is it in Kenya? I mean, Kenya is a bit further behind in economic development compared with Mexico. What's your experience?
Yeah, Kenya is probably a little different in terms of the impact of technology, in the sense that one of the things that has come out of the Kenyan markets because of technology is the urge to create local products for the local market, which probably have, some of them have succeeded very well. Like we have a very famous mobile money product called M-Pesa that is used for money transfers, but has since grown into many other ways of, you know, pushing money from one person to the other for different purposes, including business to business payments, person to business, and business to persons. And this is something that has actually become like 20% source of income for the largest telco, and this is actually a mobile money service. So, and this is successful because it's a product that was made to meet a big problem that existed in the market, which was around money transfers. So as a result of this, we've seen new supply chains that have grown out of this space, because we have, you know, huge reseller networks that has emerged from the you know, technology space, all geared toward responding to different needs and ways in which you can use a service like, you know, money transfer services, and a lot of opening up of I can call it the M market, because everybody wants to do something on the M space, and this again has created a lot of shift from, you know, young graduates. Instead of opting out for jobs within corporate Kenya, they go into the tech space to become innovators. So Kenya has slowly emerged as a leading innovation and technology hub in Africa, and you know, we've seen a lot of big corporations, international corporations, pushing their hubs, their technology hubs to Kenya, because I mean, like IBM has set up the first lab in Africa, in Kenya, you know. A lot of big companies like Cisco and Microsoft have, you know, their reasonable hubs in Kenya, and this is because of the vibrant space. Because I think one of the reasons why we would say maybe emerging markets are slow in technology is because we miss the market product fit for a lot of the international products when they come into our markets, because that's not our space in terms of maybe the mobile phone came before we had fixed lines, so mobile phone is probably a totally different kind of thing. Here it's trying to fit, but there it's, you know, it just clicks and, you know, just picks up. So I would say that's it. Anil,
you are not you're in a tech space, but you are not in in the digital space. You're in the power industry. So it's biopower, it's solar. Can you tell us a bit about that space, which is obviously a bit different from what we heard beforehand, and how it's, of course, is changing this landscape in India?
Yeah, I can do that. First, I'll give you a context. India is a very big country with a very large population. The scale of the problems because of this are very large. If you flip the coin, the scale of the opportunity is also very, very large. So the last, I would say, 20 years is when technology has really become accessible to the common man. And when I say technology, I'm specifically thinking about what we were all discussing about here, which mobile technology. So mobile technology, which is a business that I was involved in earlier also, it's hard really to explain how big the impact has been of this. So this is a force multiplier. This has created new jobs. It's created, increased efficiencies in so many, in pretty much every sector that it touches. So my market and my customers, this is very different from the demographic that we're looking at here. These are families and people who live on a couple of dollars a day. And I would argue that that is the market where the technology has made absolutely the biggest difference today.
Very good. And finally, as I said, not last, Nisha, what about, you have been working on experience of female entrepreneurs in the Silicon Valley. So it's a very different environment. Obviously, everybody, of course, thinks about Silicon Valley when we talk about technology. So it looks like, an easy way to operate. Is that also true for female entrepreneurs?
Well, let me just say that it is easier potentially in Silicon Valley than in other locations. But I would like to start first with what Silicon Valley is doing right and how there's room for opportunity and room for growth in terms of women entrepreneurs. So Silicon Valley, a couple things that it's doing right. It's an open culture. There's a lot of information exchange, and people are willing to accept risk and willing to accept failure. And that is not a social stigma, which is fantastic, not just for women, but for men. And there's a lot of education in the space. But, we've seen a lot of obstacles that women entrepreneurs have faced in Silicon Valley. Many of these things are related to networks. For example, there is a very strong, easy access to capital, fairly easy access to capital in Silicon Valley. However, there's often what you'd say is a boys' network. Many times people develop these networks, they get comfortable in them, and it's often hard for women entrepreneurs to make their way into that network and to get access to capital, to fund their ideas. And so that's something that definitely Silicon Valley can do more to improve upon. But women entrepreneurs in the Valley and elsewhere are doing a great job of forming these internal networks. There are many women's groups that support each other, and there are many also women who are becoming angel investors, VCs. It's becoming a more developed market in terms of more gender balance. That said, there's a lot of way to go. I believe only 14% of women in the US are engineers. This is quite a decline from what it was in the 80s, which was about 30% or so. Again, that's just numbers. They speak for themselves, and it's representative of also the people who make up the entire ecosystem of Silicon Valley.
Very good. So, Maria Teresa and Dorcas, as a female entrepreneur in Mexico, in Kenya, how was your experience? Do you find it more difficult? Do you find different obstacles, different challenges? Or was it, the normal ride for entrepreneurs? Maybe Maria Teresa.
Well, the tech space, as I said before, is not full of women. There is a big gap in terms of women presence in the tech world everywhere, and that's the case in Mexico. I would say even more in Mexico. in terms of the digital space, which is where I move, I would say that that's like a sweet spot because because setting up a digital company has somehow more flexibility and the way that a startup can you don't necessarily need a lot of access to capital. There are different economic factors for a tech startups than for any other startup. I think that's a sweet spot for women, and we're seeing more and more women getting into the space.
You mean you can do it from your home, from your laptop or PC, with very little capital? That's what you mean.
Exactly. I mean, you see, women setting up their own media companies. You see women setting up their own service companies, bloggers, applications and things that basically add value to the environment. And these are things that are relatively easy to, and I say relatively because it's easy to start, it's not necessarily easy to scale. And I think that's where the main issue comes. And maybe where women entrepreneurs need more and more help, and the networks are not there. So it's been interesting. Personally, I've been in the tech world for the last 15 years. So it's not like being an entrepreneur, being a woman entrepreneur was new in terms of being a woman, but there aren't support networks for women.
Okay. Dorcas, what's your experience in Kenya? When did you start, and did you start and fail and then start again, or?
Okay, so it was a bit interesting for me because when I made a decision to get into business, I just did what she says, which is, went home and used my home connection and my laptop to start up, because I'm a software-oriented person, and that worked out pretty well. The other thing I chose was to focus on a different segment, which was not well occupied, which was I picked up a lot of open source consulting, which was a bit noticeable because that was against the grid. A lot of people were focused, on the mainstream software approach to, services. And I wouldn't say that maybe it was difficult for me as a woman. I probably think that, it's difficult for young people to start businesses across the board. Not because you're just a woman, but I think, when you're young and you're not, when you go to find the decision makers, you probably find that most of them are 15 years older than you are. They have no idea who you are, probably speaking new stuff that the business hasn't tried or hasn't even thought about. That was always difficult, both for men and women. So I wouldn't say that being a woman is more difficult. I would say that being young is one of the biggest challenges when you try to introduce technology, especially new technology, into enterprises. Having said that, I would say that again, perhaps when the capital needs arise in terms of maybe servicing big business. Then being a woman can be a little bit challenging because sometimes you don't find very quick connections with sources of capital. But that doesn't mean that financial institutions discriminate because you're a woman. But perhaps their requirements would probably be a little bit more difficult for more women to raise, and maybe women do more convincing about their business why it's good than men do. Probably think that is she going to do it? Is she sure about what she's choosing? This happens. These kind of biases exist in society. But my experience is that a lot of people support self-driven women, and they actually inspire a lot of men, and they get quite encouraged when they see this kind of stuff. My branch manager, I remember, has been one of my greatest supporters, and it's a man, and that's because he said, this is a woman who wants to go into this space and wants to do it. So he's made a lot of positive decisions for my business. But that's because I think he sees, you know what you're doing, you know where you want to go, and I think that's actually one of the things that would support a lot of women in their growth. That is, when you put your mind to it, go ahead and pursue it, and people will be like, yeah, this is going to happen, and you get a lot of support for that.
Anil, obviously you provide the power so that we can really switch on our devices. It doesn't sound so high tech to say you're in power, but actually the power is necessary for the other instruments. How difficult was it for you to set up these things? You said you're still a young company, and what did you find as the major obstacles? Regulations, rules, maybe the incumbent players trying to make life difficult for you?
Yeah. So first, I think there's some kind of a built-in bias or a preconceived notion that you cannot deploy the latest technology in developing markets, and I think that's completely wrong. And that this is an opportunity to leapfrog all the old stuff and put in the very latest stuff. So I would argue that our power plants are probably the most sophisticated anywhere, comparable to anything here, because we deploy the very latest technology. We're pushing the edge with lithium-ion storage, high-efficiency motors, DC LEDs, and so on. So that's one point. I think, emerging markets, poor people are ready for the very latest technology. And in terms of barrier, I think the landscape is probably similar across a lot of developing markets, because what is lagging usually is the regulatory infrastructure. Policymakers have no idea. They're still stuck 50 years ago. And that is usually a challenge. Access to capital is very difficult, I would say, especially if you have ambitious plans. And you can spend a lot of time defocusing from your business because you have to raise capital. So I would argue that irrespective of the size of the enterprise, many of the challenges are probably similar. It's just that the scope of the opportunity could differ from market to market, but I think as entrepreneurs, the challenges are very, very similar.
Nisha, I think you mentioned about Silicon Valley, everybody being open to innovation, to entrepreneurship. When we go back to the questions on female entrepreneurs and the low numbers, you mentioned 14%. So the environment is very open, and still women find it difficult, maybe because of education you mentioned, maybe because of the networks and the financing. What are learnings that you have? How can women and others encourage women to take on these challenges? Is it a question of more transparency, exchanging ideas, or what are things that could really spur more female entrepreneurs?
Sure, and well, there are many things that women are doing right now, especially in Silicon Valley, but also elsewhere throughout the world, to encourage more women to enter this space and to be entrepreneurial. I think one of the more successful things is, again, these women's groups that they are developing support around, and that it's imbalanced. I think more networks exist in certain areas than in others, and I'd love to see that be more well-rounded. But with technology, hopefully we can connect more people together. But another thing is definitely education and social and cultural. At an early age, a lot of the women that I spoke with and that took our study, they were exposed to technology, computers, and engineering at a very early age. Perhaps a father, a mother, or a friend placed them in front of a computer and said, "Go learn." And I think we need more of that. There's much more emphasis. There's a lot of people who are doing, toys for children, specifically in the science, technology, engineering, mathematics space. I'm not sure if you've seen, but there is this one really cool toy company that came out with this, basically building blocks for women, for girls, and that was pretty exciting. Other things is that, when you're in school, I think a lot of times there is not as much knowledge about what technology can do today. People have these sort of outdated ideas of what an engineer is, both in terms of what an engineer or an entrepreneur looks like, but also in terms of what can they do, what impact can they make. And there's a lot of amazing technologies that are coming out, and I think more emphasis can be placed on the future of technology. Things like 3D printing, robotics. What can we do with that, and how can women specifically? How can we encourage them to enter into these fields and also get their perspective about how they can improve people's lives with these future technologies.
Thank you. Douglas, without trying to put you on the spot, would you be willing to share a special moment where you were very desperate, or because the situation was very difficult and you were able to overcome it with a specific attitude, or when times were maybe rougher, how did you cope with those things, and what would be your advice to other female entrepreneurs?
I'm trying to think through a space the way. Okay, yeah. There's at least one. We do have a lot of corruption sometimes in public procurement, and I think at one point somebody tried to reach out to me from a government ministry to provide some services, and I put in a bid, and somebody decided along the way that I shouldn't be awarded the contract, and they took a few actions to change the evaluation process. I don't know if this was done because I was a woman, or it was pure, canvassing for business reasons, and but I think that was one of the biggest lessons that I have learned today, because I probably took action a little earlier than I should. And maybe if I waited, I would have dealt with the situation a bit differently to change the situation. But I think one of the things that came out of that is that sometimes don't be too quick to act, because you need to give the situations time, so that when you strike, you actually get a result in your favor. The government, the ministry was able to terminate the tender, but I guess if I had waited a little longer, they would probably not have terminated. They probably have just gone ahead and awarded me. So I think one of the things that we typically do sometimes as young people and perhaps women is if emotion eats into the space, then sometimes you may miss out on an opportunity that you'd have managed a little bit better. So I would say one of the biggest lessons is, when those challenges arise, then, take your time and take a deep breath and then strike at the right time.
Very good. Maria Teresa.
Being an entrepreneur, and it doesn't have anything to do with women or men, it's a roller coaster, especially at the beginning, right? You have good days, you have bad days. There are days where you don't think that you're going to make it, and there are great days. So I think when you have the expectation that that's going to happen, it's a lot easier to manage than when you think that everything is going to be rosy and happy. And it takes a lot of resilience to, just focus on your vision, where you want to go and what you want to do, and just make sure that you can manage through the roller coaster ride. I've had many. I'm trying to think of a really impactful one, but I think every one of them have been really impactful. Many days in which I say, are we doing what we want to do? Are we where we want to be? And I think one of the biggest challenges that I face personally is that I see the opportunity of how digital can transform the businesses, and sometimes the people we work with don't, and there's this just need to drive and push this forward in terms of what you can do for your business and what digital can do for your business. And for me, that's personally the biggest frustration in terms of going faster. And I've come to realize that this is really an issue of change management, and therefore, that's how it needs to be addressed. And it takes time for people to understand that how technology can, better their business, and you need to give them that time.
Anil, any special moment in your life as an entrepreneur where you said, this was really crucial to do it this way, not the other way?
Yeah.
Or where you would have liked to do it differently with hindsight?
Yeah. So I basically spent all my time in different stages of panic. I think that's a good way to describe it. The degree varies, but it is pretty much that all the time. And there's so many moving parts, and there's so much that can go wrong, and there's so many challenges that it's how do you eat an elephant? You know, you've got a chunk, you know, one little piece at a time. A kind of a philosophy is what you need to adapt. So I can't really, you know, there's so many strange regulations or, you know, price ceilings or in my business it's right of way. You know, you're not allowed to dig a road to lay a cable and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So I think being an entrepreneur it's a lifestyle. It's, you know, you have to be comfortable with that, and eventually it becomes. I mean, it defines you as a person, and, you know, I think most of us, it'd be impossible to put you back in a corporate job. You know, you'd be pretty much, yeah. So I think, you know, if there's one insight that I'd like to leave it, that is the drive, you know, to have everything your way. I might not be expressing myself well enough, but, you know, if it's good enough, it's good. And I think one needs to resist the temptation of, you know, getting it exactly the way you want it to do, because that's a waste of time. And so what that means is you've got to compromise on a lot of, you know, the stuff that the conceptions of you have, you know, on how you want things. So good to go, you know. So a lot of compromises. I think that really, to me, is what entrepreneurship is all about.
Before turning to the audience and their questions, can we also talk for one moment about the team around you? Obviously, we always talk about the entrepreneur and think about, you know, Steve Jobs, and, you know, essentially has done everything, you know, all the ideas and so forth. At least that's the myth. You know, how important is it? I mean, you mentioned, I think, a brand manager that you're having. How important is it for you to have a team around you? And I think then later on we then also will ask Nisha, you know, what's the experience with, you know, are women better in building teams and managing teams? But maybe first, Lukas, on your experience with building a team and having a team.
Definitely, you wouldn't get anywhere alone. So having a team is part of business success, and a very critical part of business success. But in your team, you need to have the right composition, because you need to have these people who cheer you on when you're doing the right thing, and, you know, encourage you even when things are hard, if you're on the right track. And you also you need this kind of people who will tell you that, you know, that is something that we must stop doing because it's not going to get us there. You must have this kind of genuine people around you. It's not always very common, but it's very critical that you pay attention to the different opinions that come from different sides. Sometimes not said, you know, up front, but you probably just, you know, indicated. So I would say that a team around you is extremely critical, because most of the times when you're very driven as an entrepreneur, you need people to push you on when things look as if they're hard. But, you know, they always say that when things look very hard is when things are going to happen. So, but at the same time, you know, the feedback that perhaps you may not, you know, pay attention to. If you take the wrong foot, you need somebody around your team who probably, you know, pick it up and just tell you, you know, this is something that we need to evaluate because it could be one of our biggest risks. So absolutely, you need both sides of these coins. Yes.
Maria Teresa.
I would add to that, because I totally agree with her remarks. I would add to that beyond the team within your company, one of the things that have worked very well with me is that I have an extended group of entrepreneurs that we meet and we discuss. It's like it's kind of we've sworn confidentiality between us, and we come from very different industries, not necessarily the tech industry only, and we're like this support group where we go and we talk about our issues and how we can, you know, face the challenges or go through the challenges that we're facing. And that has been really helpful beyond my team, because, you know, at the end of the day, when you lead a team and you have this vision and you need to move forward really fast and keep on driving the boat, that can be a very lonely place. And for you to go and have some perspective outside of your team for me, that has worked very well. And then, you know, and these are people, it's actually 12, it's a group of 12 people that we meet every month, and it has given us a space where we talk about our businesses and we get different perspectives from people from different industries, and it's been very useful.
Anil, how did you build your team? How did you find the right people?
Yeah, I think if I were to, you know, segment different parts of what I do, hiring people and building a team is by far the most difficult thing that I have faced. And it doesn't become any easier with experience, at least for me. The lessons I've learned, the insights I've had is that, you know, that is the place where I do not compromise. You know, we need, if I want something, then it's, you know, I'll wait until we find the right person. And really, you know, to make it very simple, one thing that I'd like to see is that, you know, this person is hungry for my job, literally, you know. So if I hire people who are smarter than me, who are more clever, and they're, you know, pretty much everyone is that, you know, is going to make my job a lot easier. I think that's kind of, and, you know, so you have to resist the temptation of hiring people who think, you know, who are little copies of you, but not quite as good as you are, which I think is a trap even I have fallen into earlier. But, you know, in my ripe old age, I have some of these insights, yeah.
Nisha, when we talk about entrepreneurship and success factors, actually the team, and I also must admit, I noticed that only during our discussion, very often, I mean, does not turn up as a topic. Did you work on that, and did you find, you know, did you get any learnings on what makes a good team? Building a good team is critical, or is the network even more important than the team?
I mean, networks are definitely important, but on your day-to-day basis, you're working with the team. The team is foundational to the company, to the success of your business. You know, building a team is a universal problem for both men, women, regardless of age or background. And it's also quite a big problem that you don't find, especially in the tech sector, a lot of people who are qualified or well qualified to what you're seeking exactly. I found anecdotally that women women generally are encouraged from an early age to build cooperation, to care about others, to invest in others' well-being. And I think how that translates into being an entrepreneur and a leader is that, okay, you might not find the exact candidate that you're looking for, especially at the early stages, but you do invest in somebody who you find to be very hungry, you find to be very smart, who you find to have a different perspective than you. And from what I've seen, women-led companies, women-led startups tend to have more diverse teams than people who are, let's say, stereotypical white male entrepreneur. And that can make a world of difference in your product. It can make a world of difference in how you reach your customers. And so, you know, it's incredibly important, and not to take away from networks, but it's a completely, I think, different problem.
Very good. So now let me turn to all of you and questions. Yes, we already have some eager ones. Do we have some microphones? Do we have microphones? There's the microphone is coming.
Thank you. This has been a fabulous panel, and thank you very much. My name is Shari Barenbach, and I'm president of the U.S. African Development Foundation. So I spent a lot of time in Africa, and I've spent actually some time in Mexico as well. Silicon Valley obviously has a well-developed capital framework, so that there's the angels and the VCs, et cetera. But in much of the developing world, I find that if you're a startup entrepreneur, the sources of seed capital are very, very hard to come by. Now, if you come from the right family that has, already, has access to resources, that's one thing. I'm just wondering if you can talk about for your early sources of capital and any thoughts about how the world could be better if, in fact, there were more sources of financing, early stage, scaling up capital for women entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Okay, good. Financing. Let's collect some more questions. Here we go.
Thank you. In corporate life, we talk a lot about the work-life balance. And I think in your space, there's probably much less of a division. Your life is your work is your life. And I was just interested to know how you dealt with that, particularly as female entrepreneurs.
Very good. Over there, good.
My name is Uli Matasar. I'm from the IFC. I would like to ask a question to the lady from Kenya. One question would be, what would be the most rewarding moment for you as an entrepreneur? Because I saw that everybody talked about the challenges. So tell us about an inspiring moment where you were very happy about doing that. And the second thing would be, how would you define success as an entrepreneur?
Very good.
Yeah.
Good. So let's maybe first start with the financing issue. Obviously, that always comes up. Douglas, how did you get your first money?
Okay, so actually I didn't start with money. I just began with believing that people would buy my services. So I was more armed with what I could provide than the actual cash at hand. Like I said, my laptop and my internet connection were enough to begin my business, and I was in my house. So it's absolutely true that seed capital, or perhaps a venture capital or whatever kind of financing to expand your business, perhaps to achieve its true potential, is one of the most difficult things to find. And I must say that even right now, that's one of the things that I'm not able to find, because we don't have this kind of financing options within our markets. And it's not everybody who is very lucky to actually maybe have close family or friend that would actually invest in this kind of business. And the tech space is also not very well understood. It's not a traditional space for most of the investors within our market. I actually wish that it's one of the things that most of the people who are in markets that perhaps are getting a little saturated with ideas would think of doing, because I believe that Africa is a really big market for people to venture. And right now we have, I think close to 1 billion mobile phones in use, and with a lot of innovations in this space, and the need for product and market fit, where products must meet the local need, it's a space that would be rewarding for investors in ways that they wouldn't quite imagine coming from a different market. Yeah. So I would actually urge a lot of people to think about it, and I must say that this is a difficult space for startups in our region.
Good. Anil, on the financing, where did you get the money from?
Yeah, I could spend many days discussing, financing and the challenges. But essentially, if I try and distill this, financing is, it's an event when an investor decides he or she will trust you with their money, and they believe in you, and really, it is about establishing a relationship, whether that be with a seed investor or a VC firm or a bank. So, for that to happen, I think the entrepreneur needs to invest in the relationship. There needs to be complete transparency. They need to feel that they can trust you, etc., etc. So, yeah, I think the challenges are different depending on which market. Silicon Valley, obviously, the home of venture capital, etc. And developing markets don't have, access to money markets the same way. But really, it is about a person deciding they will trust you and cut a check. And for that to happen, and it's the same, whether it's in Silicon Valley or in New Delhi or wherever, this trust needs to be established. So that would be my contribution.
Marita, can I ask you about the work-life balance issue rather than having everybody talk about every topic?
I just want to add one point to the financing. I think in Mexico there's an interesting movement in terms of especially seed capital. There are companies that and basically funds that are seeding tech companies and starting to take some traction. 500 startups and WIDA and all these companies that are not that are coming from Spain and from Silicon Valley, et cetera, are pushing the market forward. The government is pushing the market forward too. There's a fund for tech companies, especially tech companies that are working for health and education issues. So I think it is an issue, but I think we're getting some traction. I think it's interesting. I think the biggest issue is that the regular VC funds do not understand tech, so they avoid, they just don't understand the business model and they don't have the patience that it requires, the technology company requires. But I think that's changing, and it's changing positively. On the work-life balance.
Is that really an issue, or you just enjoy what you're doing, that's why you don't care?
I just enjoy what I do. I love what I do. And I do believe my work and my life are the same. I mean, I don't understand the life thing, because work is part of my life. So it's not like it's outside of my life. It is a challenge, though, because this is your company. So, it's not like you go to sleep and you don't care. You leave all your issues there. That has been a very difficult thing to manage. Like I remember at the beginning of my company, I went to bed every night and I woke up at 3 a.m. and I woke up my husband because I needed to talk about my issues at 3 a.m. And that lasted for a week. And he said, okay, we're not doing this anymore. I need to sleep. But because it's you, I mean, at the end of the day. And my team, to the point before, has been wonderful in terms of, making sure that we are all a system that basically can push us forward without any one of us having to sacrifice a big part of our life, whatever that means.
Nisha, when you looked at this work-life balance, it all come up as an issue for female entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, or is it just not a topic because, people just assume that work is life and life is work?
Oh, it's a very hot topic. But before I get into that real quick, I'd also like to say that in Silicon Valley, VCs are in trouble. There are a lot of other kinds of sources for funding that are becoming more available. Angel investors, more individual private investors, but also crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, Indiegogo, exactly, Kickstarter, and I think that's an amazing trend that can continue, and as well as government programs. So I'm very hopeful about more access to capital, but obviously there are a lot of obstacles to that. In terms of work-life balance, that's a very hot topic in Silicon Valley as well as the rest of the world. Most women entrepreneurs that I've spoken with and that I've talked to, they say exactly what you said. Work-life balance, what is that? Work is life and life is work, especially when you own and starting a company. That said, I found it really interesting. One of the things that I found is that a lot of women started companies because they had children, they had other obligations, and they weren't finding that companies were, amenable to their schedules. And so when they're entrepreneurs, they can set their own schedule. They can accommodate everything to their liking. And then also beyond that, I would say on a personal level, I'm not an entrepreneur, but I work at a startup now. And work-life balance is, I personally still work 10 hours a day. And that's very common. So, there's quite a lot of progress to be made. Generally, childcare is a very big issue. Women aren't really afforded childcare as a kind of benefit when they're working. And for entrepreneurs, that can be very difficult. But again, you can set your own schedule. Not that there's challenges to that itself, but there is a lot of benefits to setting your own schedule and being an entrepreneur.
And then technology helps because, you could be away and people are used to this because the virtual working world is normal for technology companies. So that helps too.
Very good. I have not forgotten about the success questions and the most precious moment, but I'll keep that for the end so that we really can end on a happy note. Other questions?
Thank you. I'm Sophie Néron-Berger from CWT. I'd like to come back on one of the topics that one of you highlighted earlier, which is corruption. I'd like to have your views because it's typically the topic that never no one wants to talk about, but it's everywhere. And I think when we talk about changing the world and when we talk about access to fund, we have to deal with that. So I'd like to have your perspective on that.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi everybody. Just a comment and then a question. I think what you've taught us are life skills for all walks of life. So whether we be entrepreneurs or corporates, we need the skills that you've talked about. So the roller coaster, and being able to cope with the roller coaster, being able to cope with a complex world is necessary even in big corporates. So I was wondering whether you had any advice for us big corporates as, you know, how your skills can help improve careers and life in the corporate world.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Louise Darcourt from Renault. And I'd just like to ask a question. What in your education do you think led you where you are now? Thank you.
Good question. So, corruption. Dorcas, you have already touched on this, so I will not have you talk about this. Anil, any experience? I mean, obviously, India doesn't have the best of reputation.
I have to tread very carefully here.
Yes, yes. Please do so.
Yeah. Yes. Corruption is a fact of life. I think all entrepreneurs, I'll be categoric here, have to deal with, especially in emerging markets. And you can be pragmatic, or you can be categoric and have a zero tolerance kind of a policy. And there are varying forms of corruption. One, all the way from giving a decision maker a big suitcase full of money to favors, and so on. And you have to draw the line somewhere. And I am convinced that the only sustainable way is really to, your business has to stand on its own feet. If you're dependent on the favors, I mean, it's a slippery slope. If you go down that way, you really, you just get, stuck deeper and deeper in the spiral. So I think the best way for the business is to really have a zero tolerance way and say, I'm sorry, there are a lot of things we can do, but that is not something that we're open to.
Maria Teresa.
I would tie that to, and I agree with your view, by the way, but I would tie that to the ease of doing business, which somehow is related, right? And in the case of Mexico, just setting up your company is a nightmare. I remember that, when we set up the company, we wanted to register the people in the Social Security Service. That took forever. And I'm like, guys, I want to pay taxes. And that was very frustrating. I think that technology actually is helping to transparent a lot of those processes. So I think that's good. I've seen things in Mexico. There are many anecdotes where the people, the citizens in the country have made politicians change decisions. For example, taxing the internet. That was going to be a law that was going to be passed in the Senate, and the citizenship in Mexico, they made a big rally about this, and it didn't happen. So I think that technology will bring, and is bringing, a lot of transparency there.
Good. Dorcas, on education, what's your education and did education really help you to become what you are today?
Absolutely. My background is computer science, and that's how I got into a software business. But having said that, I think that to be an entrepreneur, this is really something that is part of you, because you have to be interested in doing things perhaps differently, and that's why you want to go out and do it your way and try to make sure that as many people as possible begin to work with you. So I would say that along the way, the education space, I always felt that I didn't want to go and work somewhere and be this big manager in this big corporation. I always felt that, I want to go out there and do something and service as many customers as I would wish within this enterprise that I was going to build. So in many ways, I would say that, to be an entrepreneur, it's a combination. Your education is part of it, but you have to have this kind of natural inclination into entrepreneurship.
Okay. Nisha, are there any patterns of education for the female entrepreneurs that you looked at?
Yes, absolutely. So I think I mentioned before, but definitely someone early on in especially young woman's life where some sort of mentor or parent said go study or give engineering a chance or plop them from a computer, and that's very, very impactful. Otherwise, it might not be till many, many years later that they get to explore these things. I think education, even in later years, is very important. There have been many stories and accounts of people who have been discouraged, even at the college level and graduate level and so forth, who have been asked, why are you in this field? Aren't you just going to go and get married and have children? And it's really shocking, but it happens. And at the same time, there are a lot of people out there who are very supportive, and there are more people coming out and supporting women in taking on whatever that they want to do, whether in engineering, science, or anything else.
Good. So let me take the last round by combining the questions on what determines success, precious moments, and the roller coaster that one of our audience referred to. And starting with you. How do you define success? Maybe a very special moment in coping with the ups and downs in 1 minute.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about that actually when the question first arose. To me, it's very simple actually. So there's no big, defining moment where suddenly the clouds break up and the sun shines and I feel euphoric. There was a day, I don't know when I decided I was tired, I just didn't want to go to work. And it struck me, the business is going to be fine. I mean, there are plenty of people who are charged up, who are doing a great job, and the business doesn't really need me. And that was a huge, and yeah, I sort of savored that moment. And that to me is that is a success.
Very good. Maria Teresa.
I totally agree with you. I think the fact that you feel like the company is no longer you and you're the, like the one-man show is the greatest satisfaction. And that has been exactly what I would define as success. Is something that that if you leave, the company will live on. And I guess with respect to the roller coaster, I think that it's about expectations. When you expect that you will face those moments, it's a lot easier. And to me, having people support me on those times and being able to really understand that this is just another day has been quite of use. I have colleagues, entrepreneurs, and we talk to each other, and when they started their business, the first thing that I said was, just be aware that this is a roller coaster. And I've heard from them that has been a useful advice, because they were so euphoric at the beginning because you just want to go and eat the world, and you don't expect that suddenly you're going to face a wall, and that's been a good advice.
Very good. Dorcas, you have the last statement and the last moment of the panel.
Okay, so I would say to me, success is sustained and continued impact of my business. I mean, I believe that, you know, if I am going to be happy about being a business person, then I must see the impact of my service to the customers that I serve and to the markets I serve. I would be I would have my biggest aha moment if I saw our society, our government, you know, utilizing technology that I have deployed in these enterprises and, you know, making a big difference, you know, cutting corruption, people getting easier services. This is really, to me, what success can be for technology. So unless, you know, if that has not happened, then I'll keep on working. But having said that, I still have a lot of opportunities when I feel, you know, joyous about what we have done. Like, you know, you finish a project and one of the services comes up that actually fits into the space of, you know, impact. And that gives me a good moment, but it's just a stepping stone. I would say success is really just keeping on pushing until we transform our societies using technology.
Great ending. Thank you very much. And thank you as the audience. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Hans-Paul. Thank you to our speakers for giving us some insight into the brilliant mind of our entrepreneurs in the new technology space. They might also get us to look at our devices slightly differently in the future. We're going to continue our discussion on technology in here after lunch. The next Planagora session will be only then. In the meantime, enjoy your breakout sessions and have a wonderful morning. Thank you again.
I need